Hey, it's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing, bringing you back for a holiday week edition of Social Media Pie. And I have a very special LinkedIn rockstar with me here today, Sandra Clark, joining me. Hey, Sandra, how are you doing today?
I am great, and I'm so happy to be starting off this holiday week with you. Kind of makes it feel festive already.
It does, doesn't it? And it's funny because we had to move the day. I had something come up on my schedule tomorrow when we were originally scheduled, and I said let's move to Monday. And I said pick a time, and you said anytime on Monday's fine. And I moved us to 11 o'clock, and without realizing, Sandra, that 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern, where I'm located, is actually 8 o'clock in the morning your time, right?
Yes, indeed. But I'm an early bird, so it did mean I actually had to be dressed. But other than that, I'm up early.
Oh, well, I'm delighted to have this conversation with you here today. And I want to welcome, I know we have folks that are watching us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And if you're watching, could you guys drop a comment below? And this does two things. One is it lets me know the stream is actually working. And Sandra and I were talking in the pre-call, and she said, hey, last week I saw a little hiccup happen. And yeah, I actually did. It was a StreamYard hiccup issue. I couldn't get it to broadcast to LinkedIn. So when people were commenting, I'm like, there's no comments that are coming in, and it helped me to troubleshoot that. So one is it lets us know the technology is actually working. Two, you can see people like Shanika and Jack and Jeremy, when you guys are leaving comments, I'm going to drop your comments below. So what I'd like you to do today to comment, and if you could, just to warm us up onto the subject, let us know, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? So if you could drop a comment below, let us know which side of the fence you fall on. And we're going to get into a great conversation here today on social media for the socially reluctant, I should say. Before we jump in on that, I want to talk to you guys about how I know Sandra. So Sandra and I, we've never actually met in person, but I create this list. I call it the LinkedIn Rockstars, and I've been tracking people who do work similar to me everywhere in the world. And I don't remember, Sandra, where it was that if I stumbled upon your name, if you found me, if somebody recommended you. Do you remember the history there?
I think we're in a couple of groups together where LinkedIn experts around the world kind of share and commiserate. So I
Yes.
think it was there.
That could be, very well be. But what I find is that people that I have on the Rockstar list, I kind of feel like I've just met Sandra, but we're old friends. Like, I feel like when I saw this on my calendar today, I'm like, oh, this will be fun because we can talk shop a little bit, right?
Exactly. It's, I mean, one of the wonderful things about LinkedIn is that you have this kind of pre-meeting where by the time you actually meet them, you feel you know them. And it's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we do some similar work, but I know there's some things that you do that's a little bit different, Sandra. So why don't you, if you could, take a few minutes, tell us a bit about who you are and what your business is all about.
Okay, so I've been doing LinkedIn coaching and training for the past 10 plus years after I was laid off from a long career at the University of California. And it wasn't intentional, but if you live in Silicon Valley, it's like everybody has to do their own startup at least once. So it's a little late to the game, but I finally did. And what I found is that so many people are just so nervous, scared, uncomfortable about being on LinkedIn or any kind of social media. And I love that. I love kind of coaching. I've just taken an executive coaching program to help improve my ability to help those people get out there, brand themselves, use LinkedIn effectively. So my clients tend to be individual users who need that little extra hand holding. I don't generally work with companies with bigger scale programs like you have. You know, I would probably refer the people that needed that to you because I like those individuals that are not the most time effective thing to use when you're running a business, but they're the people I love.
That's great. And that's the great thing is, I mean, we do some similar things, but we do some different things too. And I always look at, like, if I have a client who reaches out to me and you're in, is it San Diego area? Am I remembering correctly?
San Jose. Close, but no cigar.
Okay. It's West Coast. I remember West Coast. But
it's the north end of California.
Okay, sorry. But if I find somebody in California, I should say, that reaches out and says, hey, I'm looking for some executive coaching on LinkedIn. Can you help me? I mean, maybe this is bad or maybe this is good. I don't know. But I usually say, I'm happy to help you. But I actually know somebody who's in California, Sandra Clark, that you might want to work with instead. Would you be open to a referral to her? And, you know, happy to help you. But my philosophy is finding somebody in your local market who also has the expertise on the platform. I think it can be beneficial because if people connect with me in Metro Detroit and they're doing business in Metro Detroit, I'm going to be able to help them to amplify their efforts on LinkedIn through my network. And similarly for Sandra, if you connect with her and if you work with her on your LinkedIn training, she's got a whole network of people that are kind of more focused in California. So I will usually flip people and send referrals to, I don't want to say competitors. I think of it as co-opetition, right?
It is. And it's funny, sometimes the people that come to me, they've been referred to somebody else who's a great LinkedIn trainer, but they come to me, they say it more politely, but basically it's because I'm in the similar age group than they are. And they're more comfortable with that, just as I might refer somebody who's younger. I work with young people, but sometimes you just have to find someone that you relate to a little more, who's seen the same kind of things you have.
Yes, personality wise, I think those all are really important. And I had a conversation with someone not too long ago, and we were talking about, mature workers. And I personally like the term experience rich. And I know personally, like if I want to reach out to work with somebody, I want to look at how long have they been doing this. And when I can see somebody who's a similar age of me, have been doing this for a long time, I kind of feel more comfortable reaching out and working with those people. So great to chat with you here today. And we're going to be kicking this off. I'll continue to throw you guys comments on. So if you haven't left a comment yet, you can still do it right now. But what I'd like to do is kind of ask the question, because there might be people watching here, Sandra, who are like, social media for the socially reluctant. What do you mean by socially reluctant?
Well, it can mean several different things. In general, I would say it's those people that are just uncomfortable putting themselves on their outline, being seen. Whether they, sometimes one of the first things people will say to me is like, I hate social media. I don't want to hear about what somebody said for lunch today. Social media is so much more than that. It's about communicating with people. It just happens to be online. So if that's your conversation when you go to a networking event, talking about what you eat, okay, I guess that's your brand. Right. But if you're talking about more interesting things, then that's your brand on LinkedIn. So that's usually the first thing that I hear. I hate social media. What do you mean by social media? What do you mean by that? So there's different levels of that. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to brag. I hate bragging. That's a large component of the people I deal with. And, LinkedIn can be about bragging. I certainly see a lot of people bragging there, but it's about communicating who you are, so that I know that you're someone I want to do business with, you're someone I want to refer to, or that you're someone I want to hire. It's just being confident. It's not about bragging. So those, finding ways to make it more comfortable for people to be online. What's a way to say, I am an awesome project manager? And so if you went to a networking event, you probably wouldn't say that. You'd probably say, I love working on projects that really make me pull out the skills that I have in whatever. You just talk with confidence about the things that you're good at. It's not about bragging. There's a real difference there.
Yeah. And it's interesting how there's different levels of this, socially reluctant. There's the people who feel a little awkward bragging or humble bragging or whatever you want to call it on social media. And then there's the other people who just don't like networking, right? It feels awkward to me. I mean, I even get this way too right now, Sandra, if you go into like a Zoom room, a Zoom webinar or something like that, and then they're like, we're going to put everybody in breakout rooms. I get a little feeling of panic. I'm like, I got to make small talk with people. Right?
Well, I am an introvert, but I love people. So for me, if I go to, and this year has been wonderful for me because I haven't had to go to a lot of networking events, but if I do, what I do is I look for the people around the outside of the room, the outliers, the people that are uncomfortable. And then I go into the mode of, I want to make them feel more comfortable. So I go over to them, I make them feel welcome, I ask them questions. And, often at the end of a conversation, people say, oh, you're so interesting, so good to talk to. It's like, I haven't said a word. I've just asked questions, and that's made them comfortable. So the same thing on Zoom or a breakout room. I love that opportunity to get to know people, to ask questions. I'm curious about people. So, introvert, extrovert, I recharge by being on my own, but I do love people, and I am actually energized by being with them and learning about them, endlessly curious.
Yes. Same for me, Sandra. I'm not, I'm not shy. I mean, when I was growing up, I was shy. You know, this when you
Oh, you're
say,
definitely not shy now.
but not shy. But it's like when I do a webinar or a conversation, even like today, like this is expending energy for me, and I love it. You know, that I'm being on with you. But when I'm done, I will like sit back in my chair. I'll take all my microphones off. I've got a light on. I'll turn that off, and I'll just like breathe for a couple minutes, and then I'll want to not talk for a little while before doing the next thing. But it's not that I don't want to enjoy it. It's just, how do we recharge, right? That's part of this, maybe part of some people being socially reluctant, is understanding that, would you say?
Definitely part of it, knowing who you are and finding the part of it that that speaks to your heart, that is important to you. And we just have to do it. I mean, there should be branding 101 in high school.
Yeah.
You are going to have to brand yourself throughout your professional career, whether you're looking for a job or not. I sometimes work with people who've never had to look for a job. They just get hired from place to place to place. People come after them. Great.
Yeah.
But may not be true. You know, they get to a certain age and maybe now they actually have to look, or maybe they at least have to reach out to the people they know to remind them of how good they are and what they know so they can get those new opportunities. I want to mention one of the things about social media for the socially reluctant. Somebody says, I'm a private person. I don't want anybody to know anything about me. Well, okay, you can hide. If you don't ever need to do business, if you don't ever need a new job, if you don't ever need a promotion, go ahead and hide. But most of us tend to need to be out there in some way. So it's okay. In fact, being on LinkedIn, taking control of it is taking control of the privacy. There are a lot of settings on LinkedIn that you can use to tweak to make it more appropriate to you. You can decide, there's a lot about me online, but I have put pretty much all of it out there. So I've controlled what's out there. You'll rarely find something about me out there that I haven't put out there. So I'm a little bit of a control freak, I admit. Yeah. But, you know, for me, I'm private. And so I'm private by being very public, if that makes sense.
Well, because you control what people see about you. And I think that's an important point. Now, I want to go back because you've got a lot of expertise and a depth of knowledge of LinkedIn, and you do work with people who are socially reluctant to be on the platform. So can you give us a couple tips? Because I'm guessing there might be like a few people watching right now that are like, she said she can give me some tips about privacy and how do I control the information. So can you give us a couple of those right now?
Okay, sometimes it's about the privacy setting. You can choose how much information is available from a public Google search. So people might be on the platform and see things about you, but if they do a search for you, they might not see it. Sometimes people have problems with stalkers or weird situations, and there can be reasons to do that. But a lot of the time, it's just switching your mindset about how, what you want to say about yourself. It's not about, you can say where you work, you can say what you do. You don't have to give your life history. You don't have to give all the information about your hobbies and the things you love to do, although having a little bit of a flavor of you makes it more interesting. But, those privacy settings, I wouldn't get too carried away. I sometimes work with people and they've got so carried away, they've got everything so locked down.
Yeah.
You can't even find them. There's no picture showing. There's nothing showing. So don't get carried away with that. I think a lot of it is just finding a kind of comfort level of representing yourself out there online.
Do you mind if I pull up on LinkedIn right now? Because we're talking about your public profile settings. Would you mind if I pull it up in the background and show people what we're talking about here? And I'm going to have to pull up when I initially do the screen share. I think it's going to share your profile, but then I'll navigate to mine because I have to be logged in as you know, to see the settings. So what I'm going to do, look, it's like two of us. We're like here and there. Right? It's kind of like a duplicate thing. So when you go, and I'll just pull it up on screen and then I'll let you explain to people, what they should be looking for in this area, if that's okay.
Okay, so this is, if somebody was doing a Google search for you, LinkedIn is one of the first things that pops up. And if you click on that and you are not logged into LinkedIn, this would be what you would see. So in the case of Brenda, you are seeing everything: her picture, her headline, her education, her experience. But you can choose, if you go down on the right-hand side, to only make your information public to people on LinkedIn and not to the world. I think that's a huge waste in general. And then you can choose within that each different section whether you want your photo to show publicly, your work, your experience, your groups, and you can pick. It's you just change your little bubbles there over to show, don't show. So in general, I encourage most people to make everything visible. But there can be reasons why you might want to have things a little more private. And sometimes it's just, I have to work people up to that point of being more public. We start baby steps.
Yeah.
Getting a picture on LinkedIn for some people is the hardest thing I have to do.
Yeah.
I say to people, it's not about you, because that's the other thing I do with people who are uncomfortable being online. I tell them it's not about you. It's about other people and helping them know who you are. So make it easy for them to refer you. When I talk to people on the phone, I look at their picture on LinkedIn, and because I'm looking at the picture, I tend to be more engaged. My hands are usually going. I should have been Italian. I'm kind of, smiling more, and you can hear a smile in the voice. And so it's just getting over yourself is what I say. Sometimes I'm very brutal. I say, get over yourself. It's not about you. It's about me.
But it is for the mature person, or I like to say experienced rich person using LinkedIn, and they may be like, oh, I don't want people to see how old I am, right?
Yeah, I don't want to see how old, fat, and ugly I am. It's like, get over yourself. It's not about you. So I say you want to look your picture. You want to look like you. Look like you on a good day. Not your best day, not your wedding day or your kid's wedding day. I'm sorry, you are never going to look like that again. I want to recognize you when I meet with you on Zoom or one day in person again. I don't want to be looking around and going, who's that person? Now, truth in advertising, I'm going to have to change my headshot at the end of this year when I decide what color my hair is going to be. So I'm letting people off the hook this year because, it's a little strange. I mean, I could get another photo, but I don't know what color it's going to end up being. But I have had the situation. I've gone to meet with someone who's only seen my LinkedIn profile picture, and they were looking around, didn't recognize me because I had changed my hair color.
Right.
But again, it's about making other people comfortable, just like being in a networking event, a party. It's about going up, talking to them so they're comfortable, not just about you. And, if you're gonna, we're gonna look the age we're gonna look, facelifts notwithstanding, but you want to look bright, alert. It's not so much about old, it's about looking interested, engaged. You want to look like you're ready to reach across the table and shake their hand. And it's that kind of bright, alive type of look that I encourage people to have in their LinkedIn profile picture. You're going to look what you're going to look like. And you can make it a little more flattering. I'm okay with, 10 pounds, 5-10 years, but I do draw the line at 40 pounds and 20 years. And I do see that a lot.
See, I usually say 5 years, and especially for women, because we do change our hair color, our hairstyle, our hair length. That's another thing. I mean, men keep a short hair, and I can look at a guy from 10 years ago and you look pretty much the same, maybe a little bit more gray, but pretty much the same. But we change hair length too. And I usually say, like, especially nowadays too, Sandra, because we are doing so many Zoom calls. We didn't used to do Zoom calls. We could be on the phone or meet people in person. If you don't see the person, doesn't matter. But now you're on a Zoom call, so you can't not look like you are today on a Zoom call, because you're on video, right?
It really is. So it's just finding things that will help people get over their reluctance. It might be their picture. It might be their headline. It does say on LinkedIn your headline. It does not say your job title at the top. Yeah. But LinkedIn, the default is to overwrite that top part with your job title and name of your company, and you are so much more than that. And so you don't have to say, gee, I am the best project manager in the world. I am the social media rock star. You can simply have the words that showcase your expertise. Again, I start with baby steps with people.
So let me pull your profile up as we're talking about.
Oh dear.
Well, you're fine. No, because this is. But you guys, did you hear Sandra's reaction right now? Because that's what many of you who may be watching, going, gosh, I'm reluctant about using LinkedIn, and you might be thinking the same thing. When I say, well, let's see who's on Liam. Let me pull up Liam's profile. Liam's like, no, don't pull my profile up.
But I am the epitome. That's why they're my tribe, because that's me.
Yeah, yeah. And I think
So I,
that says volumes about the work that you do because you can relate. You're not like this person who's on the top of a mountain who's like, bestowing information. Like you have some of the same feelings as they do. And I think that's important, right? But you're talking about the headline.
Mhm.
So let's look at your headline and tell us, why do you have on here? You don't just have, that you're a LinkedIn coach, you have some different keywords. And so how did you create this headline, and what advice do you have for people that are watching this right now that are kind of like, I thought that should have said job title at company and I shouldn't change it? What advice do you have for them?
Well, it's going to vary from person to person. In some cases, it is important to have a job title. Job
Mm-hmm.
seekers, actually, it's a good idea to have the job title you want. It makes you more searchable. It helps identify you. If somebody is going to meet you, is looking you up, they can easily see your job title, but there's more room. It used to be 120 characters. Mine is about 100 characters. I'm a minimalist. It's, I don't want to say more, but it's now 220 characters, which is about 4 lines.
Right.
I don't really like the longer ones. It feels too much for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I encourage people to have their job title if appropriate, and then something that tells me what they do. I work with a company that is there are 25 partners in an interim CFO company, and they send the partners to me every time they have a new one. And their job title is partner and the name of the company. And at no point does it say that they're a CFO. So at the very least, they need to get that CFO in there. So it's more findable. And so we can quickly and easily see who you are, what you do. If you participate in conversations on LinkedIn, which is kind of the next step for that reluctance, every time you comment on somebody else's post on LinkedIn, your headline or the first couple of lines of your headline show up on that with that comment. And it's like advertising you, free advertising, and also giving a context. If I make a comment, I'm showing that, okay, well, my expertise is in this, so my comment comes from this point of view.
Could I add on to that too, Sandra? Because I love that point, and it's something I talk about with my clients too, is your headline follows you around. So right here's an example. Sandra commented on something, and you can see it says her name. I don't know if you can tell because it's a little bit small here, but you see her photo, you see her name, and then underneath that, you see her headline that appears right above the comment. So anytime she posts on LinkedIn, anytime she replies on LinkedIn, the headline follows her around. And what I love about your description of the characters is, yeah, you can use all 220. Guilty as charged, Sandra. I use all 220. I'm an opportunistic marketer. I know the more I put in there, the more keywords, and there's different rationales for that. But I do focus on the first 60 to 80 because that's where it cuts off, transformation, ... We can't read the full word. So really focusing kind of front loaded, top heavy on there. But I can see right away what it is that you do. You do LinkedIn training, consulting, profile optimizer. I get that. Even if I don't go to your profile, I get that from your headline, right?
Right. And it's also when I reach out to connect with someone, that headline shows up. And I often will get a request to connect with someone, and it will say something like, 6 figures in 6 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And I assume that they're just going to try and sell me because I don't connect with them in general. So I want it to communicate what I do, but I don't want it to be as like, oh, if I connect with you, I am just going to be trying to sell you my training. I'm not heavy in the sales department.
Yeah. So what about, people that are watching there, maybe they're socially reluctant. And part of it is, I don't want to be on LinkedIn because I don't want salespeople selling to me. That's all it seems like they do. So what's your advice to those people? How do you handle those inquiries and sales pitches that are coming in?
Love that question. Well, one is who you accept into your network. If you accept someone into your network that says something like that, they're going to try and sell you. Now, if I take a chance, it has not seemed too obvious that was the first thing they were going to do, and I've accepted them, and then the first communication they have with me is, I've got some swampland in Florida I want to get rid of, whatever it is. If it's really overt, I'll just immediately disconnect with them. So keeping your network clean is a part of it. If they're just a little bit salesy, but I maybe give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know better, I might respond back to them and saying, this is not going to be politically correct, but I'm going to say it anyways. I'm going to say the polite equivalent of, you have to take me to dinner and dining before you ask me to bed.
Right.
But, get to know me before you try to sell me something.
Right.
If I accept someone's request to connect who has not sent a message, I look at their profile to decide whether it's suitable to accept. And then I always write them a message. And my message is, thanking them for the invitation and ask them why they reached out and what I can do to help them. And I try to start a conversation. And I would say about 50% don't reply at all. 50% either reply that maybe they need some LinkedIn help. Great, a lead. Or maybe they just say, well, I don't know, LinkedIn just popped up and suggested you. And I'll still say, great. Have you noticed that we've got 20 connections in common and we're also a member of the same group? LinkedIn's really great at finding those connections. I'd love to learn more about you. And they're often so startled that they do. I start these great conversations with people around the world. And, it keeps my network more interesting and more valuable to me. So you have control. It's your choice.
Yeah, there's so many things that you're saying, Sandra. I'm like, oh, I say that too. I believe that too. And there's so many methodologies and there's different ways that you and I approach it, but it's the sentiment is the same. It's the screening in through dialogue. It's the creating conversations. It's the saying, hey, we have these things in common. And it's the relationship building before the selling. I mean, there's so many common themes in there. And we're gonna move into audience Q&A in just a few minutes here. So guys, I put a little comment ticker running below here just to remind you guys, this is your time right now to ask questions. Or if you have comments you want to add to the conversation, add those now. And if you're struggling, I know LinkedIn Live is a little bit wonky. So if you leave a comment, like it freezes the screen sometimes and you got to find the feed again. This is what I do. I watch the LinkedIn Live on my desktop or my laptop. And then find the LinkedIn Live feed on your phone, like go to my profile, go to my activity feed. You can find it from there and then leave a comment on your phone. That way you can keep the streaming going without losing the streaming of the
Very
feed.
clever. I did not know that. Thank you. What a great tip.
This is like the Brenda hacks, the lazy marketer hacks, because I don't want to not comment on things, but I know sometimes when I leave a comment on my phone, it like hiccups and freezes and then it starts over again. And then I'm like, oh, did Sandra say my name? Did she see my question? But it's like a little workaround until they can kind of get the wrinkles worked out in the process. That's what I would do. So
I love that. Thank you. I will use that when I listen into your next lives because I've got caught on that.
Yeah, and it is a little bit tricky, but now that you know, it's like you got to just know the steps. Like, where do you find it is the biggest question. How do you find it? Well, go to the activity feed. You can find it in there. So we're going to move into Q&A in just a second here, and we're going to start to kind of do that. But before we do that, Sandra, anything else as we think about, social media for the socially reluctant? That's our topic here for today. Maybe any common questions you're getting from people? Maybe that might kick off our Q&A.
There was one that came to mind that I definitely want to mention. Sometimes people say, well, but if I do something on LinkedIn, my boss is going to think I'm looking for another job. And, I don't want to bring that attention to me. So again, LinkedIn used to send out a notification for every change you made on LinkedIn. Adding your picture, adding everything. It was embarrassing. So, you had to turn that off. LinkedIn actually doesn't do that anymore. It only sends out notifications about new jobs, new education, and job anniversaries. That's it. Right. So you can even turn that off. Now, if you improve your profile and your boss happens to look and notice, I work through with people a kind of conversation you have about that. Well, of course, I want to look good on LinkedIn. Potential employees are looking at my profile as well, and I want to represent the company well, which is something you should be doing. And everybody should sort of kind of be looking for another job, open to it. It should represent you well. It represents your company well. It's great for your company because just like your company is looking for potential employees on LinkedIn, those potential employees are looking at potential managers and saying, hey, do I want to work for that idiot? Right. I'm going to get cool jobs. No, he's been in the same job 10 years. No growth opportunities for me. Yeah. So definitely that's a question that comes up a lot. And there are ways to minimize that. And there's also practicing a conversation about it as well.
That's great. I did read a stat a while back, and I can't find the source of it, but it was saying the percentage of people that are using LinkedIn for job search versus the percentage using it for professional networking, branding, just to be online professionally. It's a much higher percentage of people that are using LinkedIn for professional networking purposes than it is using it for job search. And I wish I could find it if I can circulate it.
It was a poll that somebody did recently.
Yeah.
It might also have been based on an article, but it was also a poll and a blog post. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
That'd be great. And I seem to recall it may have been from LinkedIn, like earlier on, they kind of said this data. But I think originally when they launched the site, it was kind of like, hey, this is better than Monster or Hot Jobs. It's a place to find a job. And then people started really getting on the platform, and it seemed like over time the snowball effect started to happen, where people were like, wow, I can use this for branding, for visibility, for lead
Selling.
generation, for business development, right? For selling, right? And oh, by the way, there's this job search thing that's in the background, but some people just never move past, oh, it's a job search site. So being on the site makes it look like I'm having a job. So let me ask you one final question, then we're going to go into our audience for Q&A. What's your advice for people that maybe are thinking about using LinkedIn to find a job, but they don't want their boss or their coworkers to know?
Ideally, I would go back in time a little bit and just make it a habit to collect recommendations, to keep your information updated, to keep it spiffed up. And if you haven't, then I would do a little bit at a time, maybe not a complete overhaul, but maybe a little tweak. Ask for one recommendation, update some old descriptions, update your current descriptions, very appropriate. Add a background banner, just do a little bit at a time, and maybe have that conversation in the workplace about our company should be using LinkedIn to attract the best and brightest, and they're going to be looking at us. So we all should up our game and spread the word about the company too.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah. Good. All right, I'm scanning through comments here too. It looks like we've had a couple questions and some observations and comments coming in. So here's one from Christopher, and any thoughts here that you might have to add on to this, Sandra? So Christopher, common name. If you look up Christopher Johnson, and I've done this accidentally to Christopher, I've tagged him the wrong person. There's Christopher Johnston, and he kind of falls into the category of John Smith, right? There's so many of them. So he's saying have a public profile allows you to be differentiated. So any other advice for people like Christopher that have common names on LinkedIn, how to differentiate yourself?
There's over 1,000 plus Sandra Clarks on LinkedIn. I'm a dime a dozen. What can I say? And the trick is being active on LinkedIn, because in general, if you do a search for Sandra Clark, mine will be one of the top 6 that LinkedIn suggests you're looking for, because I'm active. So being active will really help you be the one that's found. Make sure your picture shows you, so if people recognize you from your picture, that's clear. I don't recommend putting any weird things along with your name. But being active is probably the best trick I can offer.
Okay. Great suggestion. So here's another question. This is from Lee Meadows. Hey, Lee, nice to see you here today. Dr. Meadows is asking, he says, I noticed a number of people post pictures, and I'm assuming he's referring to their profile photo, where they look like they're upset, maybe like angry or ominous or something like that. What are your thoughts there on profile picture? Serious looking, friendly looking? What's the right kind of balance? And then how do you work with clients if you see their profile photo where they look like they're upset? How do you coach them on that?
Well, sometimes there's a cultural element. In some cultures, and this is not just cultures from other countries, this is industry culture, where it's not appropriate to have a big toothy grin. So I say, when my daughter was in elementary school, she hated being made to smile for those school pictures. So I used to send a note to the photographer, because he would try to get her to smile until he made her cry. So I'd send a note to the photographer and just say, just go for pleasant.
There you go.
So I'll say the same thing. If you can't do the big smile, go for pleasant. You want to look friendly. You want to look approachable. Somebody that I would like to meet and not be scared to come up to and talk to. So, incremental steps. But yes, sometimes we do have to have a conversation about that photo. And they feel this is their best photo. And I'm going, okay, this is the best we have to work with.
What do you think about sites like, and Chris Morton suggested this, sites like Photo Feeler? Have you ever used those or referred people to Photo Feeler? And if you're familiar with it, can you tell us a little bit about it?
So, if it will tell you what's good about your photo or not good. And people like me are paranoid enough. Getting a picture up there is hard enough. And now you're telling me that there's too much space between my teeth and my upper lip. And, if I go down that rabbit hole, I am never going to put a picture of me up ever again. And I'll be one of those, like mothers who have no pictures of themselves in their children's baby books. It's like, you have to be out there. You need to have your picture out there. So just go with something that you can live with. I'm very much against using those kinds of sites, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, what value I see in them is you could have, like, there was 2 poses of me wearing my blue shirt. There's the, expressive pose, and there's the regular pose. Like, I could pose, if you posted both of those, and you might get feedback saying the expressive pose looked unprofessional versus the other pose looked more serious, and then you can look at the ratings. But I think you do have to have a very thick skin if you use those sites, because you do get people saying, you look old, or you look like you're too whimsical. I wouldn't take you seriously as a consultant. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty harsh. So I don't use it for that. I'm more, if I'm using a comparison, I might say, hey, this or that. And then I look at the feedback, and some people say you look smart, more intelligent in this photo. This one, you look too playful, too fun. But Jeff, it's very natural for us to dislike our photos, right, Sandra? It's a human thing, right? To not like looking at yourself. Otherwise, we have too big of an ego if we're like looking at ourselves, right?
Yes, Zoom has been terrible this year, because I used to get up in the morning, look at the mirror, make sure I was looking respectable, and not look again to the end of the day when I wash my face. And now on Zoom, if I look at you, I look like I'm not looking at the camera.
Right.
If I look at the camera, I'm, especially with glasses on and trying to avoid the light, I'm largely looking at myself. I've never looked at myself so much in my life. It's really hard.
It's kind of like we get to the point where because we're not in person, and sometimes when you're on these calls too, Sandra, like if you're doing like a Zoom or a webinar, everybody has their video muted. Yours is the only picture you're seeing, and we crave human interaction. We crave eyeballs to look at, right? So if ours are the only ones we can look at, we'll take it.
I do a lot of webinars, and most of them are Zoom calls where at least some of the people are showing themselves, and I love that. But some of them use a Zoom webinar, which is just me showing. Right. I'm so lonely.
I know, it's hard, and it's always that audience engagement. Like I will kind of like throw jokes and comments, and I'm like, hey, do you guys know what this movie is? And wait for people to comment and whatnot. So I want to get us back. Here's another question. This is from Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, thanks for watching. What's the best resource for LinkedIn backgrounds, Sandra? The header graphic, I think, is what Stephanie's referring to there.
I like the site called pixabay.com. Okay. And one of the reasons I like that is there's incredible choice, but also if you put in a search, the top row are all paid images with a gray kind of background. All the rest, hundreds of thousands, I think, are free, and it's very transparent. I got fined $500 by Getty Images one time for using a picture I didn't have the rights to. That wasn't even to allow me to use it. That was just the slap on the wrist for, if I took it down right away. So I'm very careful about making sure people have, photos they're legally allowed to use. Now, there's so many choices there. You can find something that's appropriate to you, whether it's a professional branding thing, whether it's something that just communicates your personality a little bit. The other thing, of course, is Canva, the free design site, where you could actually take one of these pictures and add your logo to it if you're in business, or create something of your own. If you're a photographer, you can use your own photographs. I had a client one time who felt that maybe he was, there's ageism in the marketplace, especially in Silicon Valley. So he wanted to find ways to communicate a kind of vitality. So he used a picture of himself and his son snowboarding. So you can't say anymore on LinkedIn,
right,
anything with age, but you can communicate, again, vitality. So this picture of him snowboarding, it kind of created this kind of energy, and under that saying, hey, I'm young and fit enough to be snowboarding, even if I look older.
That's a nice little subtle technique. I like. It's kind of like the stealth mode, right? It's the you're sending a message without saying it directly, and it's similar to folks that have an email address on their LinkedIn that says AOL or Hotmail versus people that have like a Gmail, right? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is email important? Is it okay to have an AOL email on your LinkedIn if you're looking for a job?
No.
Or what are your thoughts there?
AOL and Hotmail. I had a realtor client one time, and she had this long history using her AOL. So we did eventually get her changed over, but for a long time, what we did, because she just could not give it up, and she was beloved in the Valley. So we had her put it as a bragging point. I use my AOL because I don't want to lose a single one of the valuable connections I've made over the year, something like that. I can't remember what, just kind of using it as a bragging point until we could get her changed over. Yeah. I've got a young woman. She's an HR person, but she also writes resumes for people, and it's amazing. She uses Hotmail. Oh, yeah. And she hasn't invited my opinion, but I'm trying to think how to raise it with her. So no, even Yahoo is looking a little dated now. I'm sorry, Gmail, people who don't like Google products, but you need to, you can have your own branded, I'm Sandra at LinkedInMentoring.com. I have my own email, but yeah, you need to update yourself. It shows your age even more than an old photo.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, I kind of feel like, well, Hotmail still works. It's convenient, but I had a friend tell me this, a couple of years ago, and he's like, Brenda, they're not going to take you seriously unless you have a Brenda at Meller marketing address. Like, he's like, especially Hotmail, they don't even make Hotmail anymore. Like, that's the way you think about it. It's not, does it still work? It's, do they still make it today? They don't make it. You cannot go and find a Hotmail email. You cannot go and get an AOL email address. I had to correct my grammar there. So if the new people coming in can get an email with that domain, it's not dated is the way I look at it, right?
So makes sense. Yeah. And there's another thing I wanted to mention about your emails. Sometimes people have come up with like quirky, fun little emails, maybe especially the younger folks, but not always. I had one, well, he wasn't a client. I teach classes sometimes at the university, and his email was rockstar at Hotmail.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Running to look for a job as an MIS professional. It's like, okay, you can keep that one for your friends, but you need to have something a little more professional. And another little trick, not LinkedIn related, but to do with your Gmail. A lot of people have put a picture with their Google account that might be with their family, with their kids, something a little quirky, maybe a little too personal. And when you are communicating with people professionally, job applications or whatever, that picture shows up and it may not represent you very well.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we have to think about optics. And this is like the whole package. If we're looking for a job, we're thinking about where our photos appear and the message that we're sending with each of those photos. I was just looking under my desk because my daughter just came in the room. She doesn't want to be on camera. So I thought it's like sometimes the kids will come in my home office and they'll grab like a stapler or a tape or something and then they'll leave out. But it was like, what was the movie, The Truman Show? Do you remember like how he escaped from the basement?
Yes.
And they're like, I don't ever remember him leaving. And she's under here, but she's like, I don't want to be on. She doesn't want to be on camera. But this is the joy of working from home.
Yeah. My dog has decided he hasn't even got out of bed yet, so.
Yeah, he's like, coming in. Speaking of, I know when we scheduled this call, I said, what are you doing before or after? And you're like, I got to take the dog for a walk a little bit later. So that'll be coming up next year for you, right, Sandra?
Yeah, and he doesn't mind waiting. I mean, I get up at 4:35, but he comes out maybe an hour or two later to sit on my legs. But it's probably at least 8 or 9 usually before we go for a walk. Today it'll be later, but he'll wait. Patient.
He'll wait for you. Well, as we start to wrap up the conversation, I see this comment from Lee on here. He really appreciates your insights. And I just want to encourage others, if you guys enjoyed the conversation, before you leave here today, I would love it if you could leave a comment and just let Sandra know, did you enjoy the conversation today? Leave a comment below. Let her know if it was helpful. Any final words of advice for people like Lee or others who might be socially reluctant here? Or anything else you want us to kind of know about your business or anything as we wrap up today?
So just do it. Find something that feels safe and comfortable and get used to doing that before you add in something else. Go ahead and go in and like people's posts. That's not high risk, is it? You don't have to comment at first, just like. Make sure it's professional, respectable, that you've got some things going on there. I've been doing a group program, a monthly program since September, helping people to post. And part of that posting is about commenting because you get as much or more visibility from commenting as you do from posting original content. So I've been working a lot with my people like that, finding ways to make it feel safe and comfortable for them to put themselves out there online. So if you have any questions, please do connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message about where you saw me and what your social media challenges are. I love them. I'm always writing blogs and doing videos about the topic. I have a YouTube channel that a lot of it is just about, walking is just controlled falling. You take one step, you catch yourself.
I love it. Control call.
Stuff out there is the same kind of thing. So I do a lot about the psychological approach to getting on LinkedIn, as well as the actual physical tips of how to do it.
That's awesome. And I did pull up your website as you were talking here. I want to drive people, if you guys want to come and check out, learn more about Sandra and the services and the coaching that she provides, go to linkedinmentoring.com. And I'm assuming if we kind of navigate throughout here, there's probably there's a contact page on here, it looks like, and there's a blog on there. I'm assuming you have some great articles and resources for people on your site as well.
Right, and it's all searchable at the bottom of the site. Is you can search, and you can search by topic. You can search for social media for the socially reluctant. You can search by topic like summary, about. So sometimes I even have, I've got some quirky subjects that I've written about over the years.
Oh, I love it. And I love at the bottom of your webpage, I don't know if this is the pop-up on your site, it's spread the message, stop the virus. Is that you? I think it might have been an ad. It was like a COVID ad.
Yes, I've got that WordPress. It's a thing you can have so that it's nice. Telling people. So it's searchable in the search bar there, which makes it easier. It used to be at the top, and WordPress did a redesign and changed. Now it's at the bottom. That's awesome. It's like LinkedIn's always changing.
Yeah,
everything's fully.
And that's why it's good to know somebody like Sandra, because she can help to guide you through the process and navigate through there. So as we wrap up here today, I'm going to pull up your LinkedIn URL one more time up on screen, Sandra. And are you open to accepting invitations from people on LinkedIn for folks that are watching the session here today?
I do like it when you send a message. If you don't send a message, I'm going to look at your profile. My criteria are: do you look respectable, professional, and someone that I'd like to connect to? So even if you don't send a message, if you meet those criteria, I'll accept you. I'll send you a message and hopefully start a conversation, because that's for me what it's about. I'm old enough now that, the world has to be interesting and engaging. Otherwise, I don't want to play.
Yeah. I love it. That's a good point. And do mention, guys, if you're watching and you want to connect with Sandra, mention that you watched her on the LinkedIn Live today, and just say, hey, I watched your socially reluctant conversation today, and I loved the tip you had about photo or a headline or something. Like, mention something, because it shows her that you were actually paying attention, and it gives a little bit of context. And I think that's key to invitations, is including a little bit of that context. So Sandra, thank you so much. This was such a delightful conversation, and I'm glad that we finally had the chance to get to know each other and catch up a little bit more here on Live.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you online through LinkedIn or wherever.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And hopefully we'll get the chance to meet in person someday, maybe through our travels or whatnot. Maybe we'll meet over to a conference or something at some point in the future. But the days of COVID will be in our rear view mirror at that point. Let's hope.
I hope so. Yeah, I'm not that far from the LinkedIn headquarters in San Francisco, and I sometimes go to events there. I can see us getting together for an event there.
That would be
sooner rather than later, I hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thanks again, everybody, for watching. Stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll look forward to seeing you in a future broadcast of LinkedIn. And I'm going to go ahead and put my outro, and then we'll close this off. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Happy holiday.